from the Presidential Palace, Manila. Dateline Malacañang.
Good day. Radio Pilipinas World Service can also be heard on shortwave broadcast through the shortwave facilities of the United States Agency for Global Media or Voice of America on the following shortwave frequencies: 15.640 MHz, 17.750 MHz, and 21.720 MHz. I'm your host, Leo Magpayo, and this is Dateline Malacañang. Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. held a phone conversation with United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Monday, discussing regional developments, economic priorities, and bilateral trade cooperation. In a social media post, President Marcos described the call as productive, saying it reaffirmed the strength of the Philippines-U.S. alliance. He noted that their exchange underscored both countries' commitment to advancing shared regional and economic interests. The discussion comes as Manila and Washington continue to deepen cooperation across defense, security, economic engagement, and regional affairs. The two nations remain treaty allies under the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty and have expanded collaboration in recent years to bolster regional stability and economic resilience. Among ongoing joint initiatives is the Luzon Economic Corridor, developed with U.S. and other partners. The project links Subic Bay, Clark, Metro Manila, and Batangas, and is designed to drive high-impact infrastructure, strengthen supply chains, and position Luzon as a globally competitive economic hub. In a Malacañang briefing, Presidential Communications Office Undersecretary and Palace Press Officer Claire Castro said, the discussion centered on strengthening the Philippines-U.S. alliance, with both sides reaffirming shared priorities in energy, economic growth, and regional security. Castro said President Marcos and Rubio underscored the need to safeguard peace and stability in the South China Sea, stressing the importance of preventing tensions and promoting a rules-based regional order. She added that the two officials also discussed ways to deepen cooperation to advance peace and security across the Indo-Pacific. Castro noted that the 2026 marks 80 years of diplomatic relations and 75 years of alliance between the Philippines and the United States, milestones that highlight the enduring strength of bilateral ties. She said the call reflects the continued commitment of both nations to work together for regional peace, development, and stability.
Sa naging pag-uusap sa telepono sa pagitan ng U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio at yung Pangulong Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr., tinalakay ang mahalagang usaping pang-ekonomiya, partikular ang Information Technology Business Process Management, usaping enerhiya o oil supply, usaping pang-ekonomiya at pang-seguridad na may kinalaman sa patuloy na ugnayan ng dalawang bansa. Sa kanilang pag-uusap, binigyan diin ang kahalagahan ng kapayapaan at seguridad sa rehiyon, partikular sa West Philippine Sea, kung saan kapwa kinikilala ang pangangailangang itaguyod ang katatagan at maiwasan ang mga tensyon sa rehiyon. Tinalakay rin ng dalawang panig ang mga hakbang upang higit pangpalakasin ang kooperasyon para sa kapayapaan at seguridad sa lugar. Binigyan diin ang lakas ng ugnayang Pilipinas at Estados Unidos na nag-uugat sa 80 years na diplomatic relations at 75 years as allies as of 2026. Ang pahayag na ito ay sumasailalim sa patuloy na pagpapatibay ng alyansa ng Pilipinas at Estados Unidos at sa magkatuwang na adhikain ng dalawang bansa para sa kapayapaan, kaunlaran at katatagan sa rehiyon.
That was Palace Press Officer Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Philippines and Vietnam have formally elevated their bilateral relations to an enhanced strategic partnership, marking a major upgrade in cooperation as both countries navigate a rapidly shifting regional landscape. President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. announced the development during his bilateral meeting with visiting Vietnamese President To Lam in Malacañang on Monday. The milestone comes as the two nations mark 50 years of diplomatic relations this July and a decade since establishing their strategic partnership in 2015. President Marcos said the upgraded partnership opens wider pathways for cooperation, including stronger political and defense ties and deeper cultural and people-to-people linkages. He noted that the move comes at a time when the region faces geopolitical fragmentation, supply chain pressures, and emerging technologies that bring both opportunities and risks. The chief executive emphasized that Manila and Hanoi share a common interest in maintaining peace, stability, and a rules-based regional order grounded in international law. He added that both maritime nations are looking to expand cooperation across education, tourism, and cultural exchanges.
Today, we elevate our ties to an enhanced strategic partnership, which will be defined by wider pathways for cooperation, stronger political and defense cooperation, and closer linkages between the Filipino and Vietnamese peoples. The partnership that we have has become increasingly important as our region navigates an ever-evolving and uncertain global environment, marked by geopolitical fragmentation, supply chain vulnerabilities, trade pressures, and the rise of emerging technologies, bringing both opportunities and risk. There is no doubt that the Philippines and Vietnam share a common interest in maintaining peace, stability, and a rules-based order in our region, anchored firmly on international law, including the 1982 UNCLOS. Our robust bilateral trade exceeding $7 billion demonstrates our mutually beneficial and vital economic partnership. These, along with our active agricultural exchanges, regional and multilateral cooperation and defense initiatives, among many areas of cooperation, keep the Philippines-Vietnam partnership closely intertwined and drive our shared progress. As we embark on this new chapter in our bilateral relations, the vibrant cultural and human connections between our people will remain the bedrock of our enduring solidarity. The Philippines looks forward to an even more robust people-to-people cooperation with Vietnam, especially through the expansion of our tourism collaboration and the deepening of our educational and cultural exchanges. We are not only marking a half-century of diplomatic ties, but we also signal the starting point for another march towards new horizons that will carry our nations and our peoples forward to progress. I trust that today's discussions will further deepen our engagements and open new avenues to collaboration, guided by mutual respect, the rule of law, a shared commitment to ASEAN centrality, and our shared aspirations for peace, stability, and prosperity.
For his part, President To Lam described the Philippines as an important regional partner, expressing confidence that the two countries will continue to strengthen cooperation across multiple sectors. He said Vietnam is committed to working closely with the Philippines to bring the partnership to greater height with ever-increasing substance, comprehensiveness, and effectiveness. The To Lam's visit is the first to the Philippines by a General Secretary of the Communist Party of Vietnam and comes as Manila chairs the Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEAN this year. Vietnam remains the Philippines' sole strategic partner in Southeast Asia, with cooperation spanning trade, food security, defense, maritime affairs, education, tourism, and regional diplomacy. The enhanced strategic partnership is expected to pave the way for expanded collaboration in economic development, security, emerging technologies, and regional stability.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Philippines and Vietnam declared that peace, stability, and freedom of navigation in the South China Sea are non-negotiable, as both countries elevated bilateral ties and renewed a key defense cooperation agreement on Monday. President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. made the statement after bilateral talks with visiting Vietnamese President To Lam, stressing that the two maritime nations share a firm position on safeguarding stability in the disputed waters. The declaration came alongside the renewal of the 2010 Defense Cooperation Agreement, expected to strengthen collaboration in maritime security, military education, and disaster risk reduction and management. Detailed provisions of the updated pact have yet to be released. The South China Sea remains one of the world's most critical waterways, with roughly one-third of global maritime trade passing through the area each year. The Philippines, Vietnam, China, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan maintain overlapping claims in the resource-rich region. Both Manila and Hanoi have faced separate maritime tensions with China in recent years. President Marcos reiterated that the Philippines and Vietnam remain committed to resolving disputes peacefully and in accordance with international law, citing the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, and the 2016 Arbitral Award, which invalidated China's expansive 9-line claim. Beijing continues to reject the ruling, while Vietnam, though not a party to the case, has consistently emphasized adherence to international law. Beyond defense, President Marcos and Lam also agreed to intensify cooperation against transnational crimes, including internet fraud, human trafficking, illegal gambling, and people smuggling through enhanced intelligence sharing and law enforcement coordination. The upgrade in ties comes ahead of the 50th anniversary of Philippine-Vietnam diplomatic relations in 2026 and as the Philippines chairs ASEAN this year.
We have just witnessed the signing of a pivotal agreement, the renewal of the 2010 Philippines-Vietnam Memorandum of Agreement on Defense Cooperation. This strategically important framework will significantly bolster our joint capabilities in maritime security, military education, and disaster risk reduction and management. As fellow claimant states, we reaffirm that maintaining peace, stability, and the freedom of navigation and overflight in the South China Sea remains non-negotiable. We stand resolute in our commitment to the peaceful resolution of disputes grounded firmly in international law, particularly the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, and the 2016 South China Sea Arbitral Award.
Was Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. on Monday urged Vietnamese companies to expand their presence in the Philippines, pitching the country as a prime destination for investments as Manila and Hanoi mark 50 years of diplomatic ties. Speaking before some 600 business and government leaders at the Vietnam-Philippines Business Forum, President Marcos said the Philippines is open to partnerships and is positioning itself as a hub for smart, sustainable manufacturing and high-value services. The president cited recent reforms, including the Create More Act and amendments to investment and retail laws, aimed at attracting more foreign capital, along with new rules allowing longer land leases for investors. President Marcos said the Philippines is targeting investments in digital technology, green manufacturing, shipbuilding, critical minerals, electric vehicle or EV supply chains, battery production, and digital infrastructure. He stressed that stronger cooperation with Vietnam is essential as global supply chains shift. Vietnam was the Philippines' 11th largest trading partner in 2025, with bilateral trade hitting $7.17 billion. Philippine exports included digital integrated circuits and electric motors, while Vietnam remained a key supplier of rice and electronics. As ASEAN chair, the Philippine president also pushed for deeper regional connectivity and the rollout of the ASEAN Digital Economy Framework Agreement, calling the digital economy the region's next growth engine. The forum was held alongside the state visit of Vietnamese President and Communist Party General Secretary To Lam.
The Philippines and Vietnam have built a relationship founded on economic resilience, mutual growth, and a shared commitment to a strong, sovereign, and integrated ASEAN. Vietnam has become an indispensable partner in trade and investment. Last year, Vietnam was the Philippines' 11th largest trading partner. And that year, our bilateral trade reached a remarkable $7.17 billion. The Philippines has also become a key contributor to Vietnam's technological advancement. In 2025, we exported over $424 million in digital monolithic integrated circuits and over $200 million in electric motors. At the same time, Vietnam remains a vital partner in strengthening our food security and industrial supply chains, providing more than $1.32 billion in high-quality rice, alongside essential electronic apparatuses. As encouraging as these achievements are, they also point us towards the next stage of our partnership. While trade continues to reach new heights, we see even greater opportunities in investment. This forum provides an avenue for us to discuss the exciting developments in the Philippines investment landscape and the opportunities we seek to unlock to grow our businesses. We have enacted sweeping, business-friendly structural reforms designed to give you a globally competitive edge. Among these is the Create More Act, which grants incentives to qualified projects. Through the amended Foreign Investments Act, we have lowered capital requirements for qualified startups and investment activities. To further improve the ease of doing business, we have implemented the amended Retail Trade Liberalization Act of 2000, reducing the minimum paid-up capital requirement for foreign retail enterprises. We have likewise enacted the Act liberalizing the lease of private lands by foreign investors, establishing the stability of long-term lease contracts, thereby providing greater certainty for long-term investments. Complementing these reforms is our Green Lanes for Strategic Investment to facilitate high-impact projects. This forum takes on an even more profound significance as the Philippines chairs ASEAN 2026. As we steer the region towards deeper connectivity and inclusive growth, Vietnam remains our steadfast partner. Together, we will advance boosting MSME development, unlocking digital innovation, and enhancing regional supply chain resilience. Among our priorities during our chairship is the swift implementation of the ASEAN Digital Economy Framework Agreement. The digital economy is the engine of our future growth. Vietnam's collaboration is absolutely crucial as we establish the world's first region-wide, legally binding digital economic pact. Our message to the region is clear. The Philippines is positioning itself as a premier destination for smart, sustainable manufacturing and high-value services. We are open to partnership, ready for investment, and eager to work with you in creating new opportunities for growth.
Was Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. and First Lady Luis Araneta Marcos hosted a state luncheon at the Ceremonial Hall of Malacañang Palace on Monday in honor of Vietnamese President To Lam, who also serves as General Secretary of the Communist Party of Vietnam, and his wife, Madame Ngo Phuong Ly. The luncheon capped the Vietnamese leader's two-day state visit to the Philippines. In his toast, President Marcos underscored the deep and enduring friendship between Manila and Hanoi, a relationship shaped by shared maritime heritage, decades of cooperation in Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEAN, and a commitment to mutual respect. He said the Philippines and Vietnam have consistently demonstrated how neighboring nations can work together to uphold stability and prosperity in the region. The President highlighted the need to sustain open dialogue and expand collaboration on key challenges confronting both countries, including food and energy security, ocean sustainability, and the preservation of peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific. He noted that practical cooperation, from trade and agriculture to maritime cooperation and people-to-people exchanges, continues to strengthen the strategic partnership. President Marcos added that as both nations move toward the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations, the Philippines remains committed to working closely with Vietnam to advance shared interests and deepen ties between their peoples.
The conversations that we held this morning were both substantial and far-reaching, reflecting the profound trust that defines our relations. By officially elevating our ties to an enhanced strategic partnership today, we have opened another chapter to the continuing dynamism of our diplomatic relations. Our two nations are connected by more than just geographic proximity across the South China Sea. We are bound by a seafaring heritage, a fierce pride in our independence, and an unwavering belief in the resilience of our people. Our interests converge in the advocacies for energy and food security, addressing emerging threats, ocean sustainability, international law, and the peaceful settlement of disputes. And even as the Philippines and Vietnam may sometimes hold differing perspectives on certain regional issues, our two countries have consistently demonstrated the maturity and strategic foresight to pursue constructive dialogue and practical cooperation. I am confident that the years ahead will see even stronger ties between our two governments and between the Filipino and Vietnamese peoples, nurtured through harmonious, vibrant, and productive interactions. With our deeper engagement, stronger people-to-people ties, and more substantive collaboration, we look to a future that the Philippines and Vietnam will not merely face, but boldly navigate together.
Philippine President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr.
Dateline Malacañang.
Malacañang announced that the Development Budget Coordination Committee, or DBCC, has begun preparations for the 2027 national budget, holding an initial meeting to review the government's economic assumptions for next year. Palace Press Officer Undersecretary Claire Castro said, the DBCC is recalibrating key economic indicators that will guide the planning and programming of government projects and spending for 2027. She said this was based on information shared by Acting Budget Secretary Kim Robert De Leon. Castro added that the committee also assessed the country's current economic environment, taking into account the latest data on growth, inflation, foreign exchange, and global oil prices. The DBCC agreed to conduct a more detailed study to determine how these factors will affect government revenues, expenditures, and the overall fiscal position in the short and medium term. Castro said the goal is to ensure that next year's budget is aligned with the most updated economic conditions and the potential challenges the country may face.
The DBCC met to recalibrate assumptions based on latest developments on economic growth, inflation rates, foreign exchange, and oil prices. The committee has agreed to further study the effects of these variables in the country's fiscal position in the short and medium term. Recalibrated figures will be finalized to serve as input for the preparation of the 2027 budget.
Was Palace Press Officer, Undersecretary Claire Castro.
Dateline Malacañang.
In other news, Senator Jinggoy Estrada and 3 of his co-accused are now detained at the new Quezon City Jail male dormitory in Payatas after undergoing return for warrant proceedings before the Sandigan Bayan 5th Division in connection with the plunder case filed against them. According to the Bureau of Jail Management and Penology, or BJMP, Estrada, former Assistant District Engineer Denril Cesar Cortuna, and former District Engineers Manny Bulusan and Arturo Gonzalez Jr. were transferred to the facility on June 1st after completing all required legal, medical, and custodial procedures. The BJMP reported that Cortuna was admitted at 5:47 in the afternoon, while Estrada, Bulusan, and Gonzalez entered the jail at 8:15 in the evening, following medical assessments. Once cleared, they were placed in the general population in accordance with existing custodial protocols. Meanwhile, former Public Works Secretary Manuel Bonoan remains confined in a hospital after his blood pressure reportedly spiked. He is currently under medical observation. Estrada and his co-accused are expected to appear before the Sandigan Bayan 2nd Division Monday afternoon for the arraignment and pre-trial of their graft case.
Dateline Malacañang.
The 11-member Senate minority bloc on Monday evening said several key measures were left hanging after the majority, led by Senate President Alan Peter Cayetano, failed to attend the 5 in the afternoon resumption of session following the arrest of Senator Jinggoy Estrada. In a joint statement, minority senators said they were present, ready to work, and prepared to vote on pending bills, but the majority chose not to show up. Among the measures stalled were the Magna Carta for barangay health workers, the anti-hospital detention bill, the confirmation of generals before the Commission on Appointments, and bills granting Philippine citizenship to Benny Boatwright III and Matthew James Ramos. They rejected Cayetano's call for the Senate to go quiet in the name of institutional independence, saying the chamber should not halt its work over a lawful process involving the Ombudsman and the Sandigan Bayan. The bloc insisted the non-convening of the session amounted to a boycott over Estrada's arrest. The minority added that if the majority wants to protest or defend its position, it should do so on the Senate floor, not by keeping the chamber idle. Cayetano, in a Facebook post, challenged the minority to stand for the Senate's independence, following the issuance of an arrest warrant against Estrada in a plunder case tied to alleged flood control anomalies. He said the Senate is a co-equal branch that must be allowed to fall silent so the public can question why. The minority, however, urged the Senate to open its doors, call the session to order, and return to work, saying no political dispute can erase the duty of senators to show up, follow the law, and serve the people.
Dateline Malacañang.
The Department of Migrant Workers, or DMW, says it is ramping up reintegration programs to help overseas Filipino workers, or OFWs, affected by global conflicts transition into jobs, skills training, and livelihood opportunities back home. In a briefing at the DMW headquarters in Mandaluyong City, Undersecretary Felicitas Bay and Assistant Secretary Kiko de Guzman reported that reintegration efforts have accelerated, especially for thousands of OFWs displaced by the conflict in the Middle East. De Guzman said that since President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. launched the National Reintegration Network, or NRN Caravan, in April, the DMW has visited nearly all regions to check on returning workers. More than 4,000 former OFWs and over 700 recently repatriated workers have already received frontline services, including livelihood support, employment referrals, and psychosocial assistance. The NRN, led by the DMW and supported by 15 agencies, provides full cycle support to ensure returning OFWs immediately access government programs instead of facing uncertainty. Bay said more than 2,000 OFWs have expressed interest in reintegration services, around 1,500 for livelihood programs, over 600 for local employment, and about 1,300 for redeployment abroad. Some repatriated workers are waiting to return to their original employers once conditions stabilize, while others are applying for new overseas jobs through government-to-government channels. DMW Secretary Hans Leo said skills development is now a major focus, with expanded training in caregiving, emergency health services, and even artificial intelligence. De Guzman said AI courses are being rolled out nationwide to help OFWs become future-ready. Undersecretary Darlene Pajarito added that reintegration efforts increasingly include helping OFWs find opportunities within the Philippines. She cited Region 9, where 142 former OFW teachers have been successfully placed in local teaching positions. Pajarito said the broader goal is to build a support system that continues long after workers return home, ensuring they can rebuild their careers and livelihoods.
Dateline Malacañang.
And finally, the Philippines' liquefied petroleum gas, or LPG, supply has strengthened to nearly 42 days following the arrival of about 21,000 metric tons of LPG procured under the Department of Energy, or DOE's Emergency Energy Security Program. In a statement, the DOE said the shipment, a 50-50 mix of refrigerated propane and butane, arrived on May 30th at the South Pacific Incorporated Terminal in Calaca, Batangas. The cargo was sourced by the Philippine National Oil Company, or PNOC, from Enterprise Port in Texas through Trafigura. Energy Secretary Sharon Garin said the additional volume provides assurance that domestic supply remains stable, benefiting households as well as restaurants and manufacturing facilities. DOE Undersecretary Alessandro Sales said unloading the shipment will take 4 to 5 days, and the delivery adds roughly 4 days' worth of supply to the country's inventory. He noted that the law requires at least 7 days of LPG stock, meaning current levels are now 6 times higher than the mandated minimum. Sales added that global petroleum prices have shown signs of stabilizing amid developments in the Middle East though volatility persists, contributing to the 3 peso and 41 centavo per kilo increase in LPG prices for June 2026.
Dateline Malacañang.
Before we conclude our program, Radyo Pilipinas World Service of the Presidential Broadcast Service can be heard over the following shortwave frequencies: 15.640 MHz, 17.750 MHz, and 21.720 MHz. Radyo Pilipinas World Service is also live on audio streaming. Just download eVox PBS Receiver on your Google Play Store or the App Store from your Apple phone. You can also visit our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Just type in and search for Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Kindly subscribe, like, and share our post as well. And that concludes this edition of Dateline Malacañang. For Radyo Pilipinas World Service, this is Leo Magpayo. Good day and stay safe.
From the Presidential Palace, Manila, Dateline Malacañang.